Have you ever heard this advice? To improve your listening comprehension, just listen to a lot of audio in your target language. Listen every day, and over time, your brain will make sense of it. Sounds simple, right? But for me, it didn't work. Not even close. Back in my first couple of years of learning Spanish, for 6 months straight, I listened to Spanish every day, 30 minutes on my way to work and 30 minutes on my way home. I was listening to podcasts, the radio, audiobooks, you name it, all in an effort to follow this advice. But here's the thing. After all that time, my listening comprehension wasn't any better than it was on day one. I still couldn't follow conversations. I still couldn't pick out words clearly. And honestly, I started to wonder if something was seriously wrong with me. So after 6 months of daily listening with zero progress, I gave up. I stopped trying to force listening comprehension and instead joined a local Spanish school just to try something different. That's where I met one of the most important Spanish teachers I ever worked with, Ileana. And I still remember what she said on the first day of class. In my classroom, there are no rules. If you want me to explain something in English, I'll explain it in English. If you want me to explain something in Spanish, I'll explain it in Spanish. And if you want to ask a question in either language, go for it. It was one of the first times I felt like I wasn't being judged for how I was learning. There was no pressure to listen only in Spanish, no guilt if I didn't understand everything. Instead, there was structure, there was progress, and there was clarity. I studied at school for 2 years, but even after just the first 3 months, I noticed a huge difference. I went back to one of the Spanish podcasts I used to listen to in the car, and suddenly I could understand so much more. I could follow the topic, recognize individual words, and keep up with the flow of the conversation. Looking back, the difference was clear. When I was listening in the car every day, I wasn't actually learning anything. I was hoping that passive exposure would magically turn into understanding. But at the Spanish school with Ileana, everything was different because I was finally learning about the language. Sounds, vocabulary, grammar. I was making connections, asking questions, getting feedback, hearing Spanish sounds more clearly, and that learning gave me pieces of the puzzle, so when I listened later, things started to fit together. So the major shift that made all the difference was I stopped trying to practice listening in isolation, and I started to build my knowledge of Spanish, and that knowledge is what made listening easier. The more I knew about the Spanish language, the better I could hear it and understand it. Not because I got better at listening as a separate skill, but because my brain had something to recognize. Learning came first, listening improved because of it. So if you've been struggling with listening comprehension and wondered why it hasn't clicked yet, the problem isn't your listening ability. It's that you're trying to understand without having the tools to make sense of what you're hearing. And it's not your fault, it's the method. If you want to improve your listening comprehension, don't force yourself to try to understand. Instead, focus on learning. Build your knowledge of the language, sounds, vocabulary, grammar, phrases, and patterns. In other words, don't just listen harder. Learn as much as you can, and your listening comprehension will follow. Now, these days when I study other languages, I don't spend a minute trying to work on listening. Instead, every study session is about learning how sentences are built, how words connect in real speech, how certain sounds change when spoken fast versus slow. That's what I focus on. And if you want a good example of the kind of learning that improves listening, check out my video on how to not sound like a gringo. In it, I break down the biggest challenges for English speakers. That's how Spanish and English treat vowels, and especially unstressed syllables, differently. This is the kind of knowledge that when you stack it up over time with vocabulary and grammar, will improve your listening comprehension.